Hi, it's Matt at RuffHouse Studios, and welcome to Cannabasics. Today, we're making Cannabis Infused chocolate truffles. Now here's what you need to make Cannabis Infused chocolate truffles. You need 3 to 5 grams of cannabis flowers, a half a cup, that's 1 stick plus 2 tablespoons of unsalted real butter, 1 pound of good quality semi-sweet or bittersweet chocolate to make the ganache, 8 ounces of dipping and coating compound chocolate, and you can use white, dark, or milk chocolate for that, for the coating, for dipping them, 1 cup of heavy cream, 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and any other optional flavors. It's not required, but if you'd like to use the same chocolate that I'm using today, please check out chocoly.com. They have this candy and molding dark chocolate that we're using. There's also milk chocolate and white chocolate. They have a great assortment of quality chocolate, so please check out chocoly.com. And now let's get started making our truffles. Today's recipe, we're going to be using straight up cannabis flower. I'm using really high quality medical grade cannabis. I'm putting about 4 grams in there. You can vary the amount that you want to get the potency that you want. These will make about 30 milligram a piece truffles, and it'll make about 36 truffles. Okay, so let's get started. The first step, as always, is going to be to grind and manicure your cannabis. You can use a grinder if you have one. I'm using a chef's knife and just chopping that cannabis until it's a fine grind. Make sure you remove any stems and seeds if you have any. I'm using medical cannabis, so I hardly ever have them, but I always like to say that because everybody doesn't use the same kind of cannabis. But make sure you pull out your stems and seeds to get the flavor better. And then you put that in a bowl that can go into the oven. You can use a ramekin or something if you don't have a metal stainless steel dish like this. Wrap that in foil if you want to help keep down the smell. And then you're going to put that in the oven preheated at 250 degrees Fahrenheit. We're going to leave that in 25 minutes to decarboxylate or activate the cannabis. That'll make sure that we get the full potency out of it when we ingest it. Okay, and while that is decarboxylating, I'm going ahead and clarify our butter. This will also make it more bioavailable. It'll also make our butter a little more rich and creamy. As taking out the milk solids there, I'm heating that up over a medium to high heat, and then you see the milk solids will separate out as a foam or a little white skim. And you just take the time and skim that off with a spoon as carefully as you can. You should be left with about 1/3 cup or a little bit more of butter oil once you've clarified it. So we lost just a small amount of the milk solids there, but you have a nice yellow clear looking butter oil that's going to make this perfect. So now we've got our cannabis that has been decarboxylated. It's just a little bit more brown than it was before. You can't really tell the difference much, but it's got a really strong aroma of like an ammonia smell, and that's fully activated. Then we're going to go ahead and combine the butter and the cannabis into another heat proof bowl, and this time we're using a double boiler setup. And you can just see I'm using a small saucepan with water boiling in the bottom with this dish on top of it. If you can use a double boiler if you have one, or you can set up a little apparatus such as this. And now we're going to infuse. And we're going to infuse this for 1 hour. Make sure that you keep water in the bowl underneath there. Make sure that it's staying just slightly boiling. And you can stir that occasionally. An hour later, we're going to have our infused cannabis oil. A little something I'm doing different this time is I'm just pouring it through the strainer, and I'm not going to squeeze or anything out of it this time because I'm actually going to do another infusion step. So there's those plus 2 tablespoons of butter. I'm not even going to bother clarifying it this time. I'm just going to put that butter right into the cannabis. I put the cannabis back into that double boiler. So we're going to be able to go ahead and get started our recipe with this first batch of oil, but this other batch of oil is going to be left to infuse, and we'll use that in the last step of the recipe. So make sure that we get every bit of the THC out of our cannabis. And you can see we've got a really strong, really clear looking cannabis oil here to start with. Okay, so now we're going to begin making our ganache. So take a medium or large mixing bowl, and then we're going to pour in our pound of chocolate, and then we're going to take our cream. You can even do this in the microwave, but you want to get that cream up to just to it starting to boil. It's nice and hot. You can see the steam coming off there. And then you're just going to pour that right over the chocolate. No need to put the chocolate over heat. We're going to bring the heat to the chocolate in this case, and this will make sure that we don't scorch or cause the chocolate to seize up or anything. It'll be nice and smooth. When it comes to making ganache, you want silky smoothness. So we're going to make sure that we do everything to ensure that. Now that we've added in our first amount of cannabis oil to that first strong batch of cannabis oil, we're going to pour that right in there, and then we're going to start whisking it. Use a big wire whisk and just whisk and whisk. It might take 3 or 4 minutes and get that nice and silky smooth. Now if you whisk too long, you're going to start seeing air bubbles come in. You want to make sure you stop if you start seeing air bubbles come into it. And there we go. We got a nice silky smooth chocolate ganache. We're going to cover that because it's still hot now. We're going to put that in the freezer. Or you could also put it in the refrigerator. It'll take about 1.5 hours, 2 hours in the freezer. It'll take about 3 to 4 hours in the refrigerator. But you want to get that nice and firm all the way across. While that's going on, you got a little while, so what I like to do now is to prepare my toppings. Now, just traditional truffles might just be dusted with cocoa. So you can prepare a little bag with some cocoa in it for doing that if you want to use that method. You can also use chocolate sprinkles to coat your ganache balls. Now, ganache itself is way too sticky to leave uncoated, so that's why you want to coat it with something so that you can pick them up and handle them. And then also you could use toasted nuts, which is my personal favorite. Nuts and chocolate go so good together anyway, but you want to make sure you toast these two. Put them in the oven at about 350 for about 15 minutes or so. Get a nice aromatic flavor on those, the aroma, and let them cool off completely before you put them in your bag. So if you're not dipping in chocolate, go ahead and prepare your coatings and have those ready for when your truffles get done and cold. And in the meantime, also about an hour and a half after you've started this infusion on this remaining cannabis, you can go ahead and strain that out. And this time I am going to go ahead and squeeze it all out and make sure I get all the cannabis out of there. And there we go. We've got our second little batch of marijuana butter. And the reason we're using that second batch of butter, like I said, was to first make sure we get all of our cannabis out, all the THC out of our cannabis, but also we're going to temper that into our dipping chocolate. For one thing, this is going to layer the flavors so that we have a little bit of the cannabis flavor in the outer shell so that when you get to that inner shell, it's not going to be such a shock to your system. So I've taken that infused butter and divided it between my 3 dipping chocolates. Okay, and we'll have those ready for dipping later. And now we're going to go ahead and start forming our ganache balls. Our ganache has been in the freezer for a couple hours now. It's nice and firmed up. And I'm using a 1 teaspoon ice cream scoop, and I'm scooping those out to make sure that I have an even amount in each little ball. Okay, and then we're going to take those, and you probably want to chill those again for about another 30 minutes or so before you start rolling them in our dry ingredients. Now I'm just going to, for example, I'm showing you every kind of way I know to make the ganache balls. So we're going to start with the rolled nuts, rolling them in the toasted nuts. So you see I'm just dropping them down into the bag after I form them into a ball a little bit better, rolling them around and getting them nice and coated with nuts. So if you're going to use toasted nuts, that's how you do that. And it's pretty much the identical way for doing it with the chocolate sprinkles. You just put them in the bag, 1 or 2 at a time, and coat them around. And there you go. After you've coated them, you can also kind of form them back into a ball better too. And again, the same thing with the cocoa. Just drop them in the bag, give them a nice little tossing in the cocoa, and form them into balls if they're not shaped right. And there you go. That's our dry things. But now is for the fun part. And for the chocolate, you're definitely going to want to make these cold. So go ahead and form them into a ball and then put them back in the freezer. So we're going to have these nice and cold. So go ahead and prepare them in small batches. Put them back into the freezer for another 30, 45 minutes and let them get nice and hard and cold before we start moving on with this. And while those are in the freezer, you can go ahead and start melting your chocolate for dipping. And you want to wait till the last few minutes so that your chocolate's just about ready to start dipping, then melt your chocolate and have that ready. Okay, and now we're going to start dipping these. I'm starting with the milk chocolate. And you can see I'm using this cool little dipping tool that I actually got this dipping tool at chocolate.com too. And there's different types of dipping tools that you'll see when I turn this over here. It leaves kind of a little bit of a pattern in the chocolate with that little spiral shaped dipping tool. So there's different types of dipping tools that you can use, but you want to get your ganache, roll it around, and then shake the excess chocolate off as much as possible. And then put them onto some sort of like parchment paper. These little plastic party plates work perfect for this. And then you put those back in the refrigerator to let set. Now, when it comes to the dark chocolate, you can see now I'm using like a fork. It's like another kind of dipping tool that's just a simple fork, and that's going to leave a lot smoother, flatter, more plain type coating on the outside. So your dipping tool does have some bearing on how the final product will look. And so then now I'm moving on to the white chocolate. I did the white chocolate last because when the chocolate's hot and the ganache falls down in it, it kind of starts to blend and melt into it. So make sure you got your balls nice and cold when you do the white chocolate for sure. Okay, now all of my ganache balls or my truffles are done now. And you can see that this makes a really impressive display when you put this out on the table. It will be hard for people to believe that you actually made these yourself. Believe me here. And you could get better at it than I have. These might look a little sloppy to professional chocolatiers, might be looking at this and being not so impressed. But I think they really look great and they taste amazing. This is such a delicious and rich recipe. It will blow you away. And these balls are about 30 to 35 milligrams a piece. If you use this recipe and you use cannabis that's 25 to 28 THC. That's what you'll end up with. And a note on these, because of the heavy cream, you definitely want to keep these in the refrigerator. If you're going to leave out for more than a couple of hours, you want to make sure that you keep those refrigerated. And you may, like I did, have a lot of excess chocolate left over, and I've put some over some toffee peanuts here. That's dark chocolate and toffee peanuts. I put nuts in the milk chocolate, and then here I'm putting cranberries and walnuts and the white chocolate. You can just put those in the same kind of plates and mix it together and put them in the refrigerator, let them get cold. And that makes actually a really nice chocolate bark. So there's kind of a bonus recipe there. You can just get some chocolate like this at chocolatey.com and just add some canna butter and make your own candy bar infused chocolate that way. So again, check out chocolatey.com if you want to get some really high grade chocolate that's perfect for doing this kind of recipes, and also the dipping tools. Make sure you check them out. And I hope you enjoyed this recipe for making chocolate truffles. It's been a lot of fun and it was a lot of work, so I hope you enjoyed this recipe. If you did, please leave a thumbs up, and also make sure you're subscribed to RuffHouse Studios for even more cannabis culture videos made just for you. This is Matt from RuffHouse Studios. Thanks for watching.